Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to the Heartbeat. Today we're going to be talking about Duncan Jones's Warcraft. Join me, won't you? So, in Warcraft, the orc homeworld is dying, forcing the Horde into the realm of men. Unfortunately, most of them do blindly follow their very evil, power-hungry leader, Gul'dan, who really has no interest at all in sharing this new land with his present occupants, forcing the human king Ren and his mightiest warrior Lothar into conflict with the orcs, really putting into question the future of both races. Now, how to assess this film? Warcraft was a rather strange, consistently uneven movie-going experience. One moment engaging and unique, and another boring and run-of-the-mill. And that last phrase especially, run-of-the-mill, is such an unfortunate thing to ascribe to a Duncan Jones film, because this filmmaker has actually described his own desire to kind of emulate the career of director Chris Nolan, Moon being his Memento, Source Code being his Insomnia, and now Warcraft being his Batman Begins. But one of the reasons that Nolan's first big-budget film worked as well as it did was he never lost himself in the narrative and visual expectations attached to most superhero films, and made a film that, from start to finish, felt like a Chris Nolan film. One where he courageously infused things like his non-linear inclinations or his visual groundedness. Unfortunately, on Warcraft, though, things were kind of just split right down the middle as far as quality and kind of Jones's fidelity to his own voice and style, with nearly all the orc portions of the film ranging from solid to great, and nearly all the human portions ranging from acceptable to embarrassing. And though there are any number of reasons as to why things came out this way, the one that kind of makes the most sense to me is just the fact that these CG-heavy orc portions were completed later, which is just a necessary byproduct of the very time-consuming VFX, but would also have given Mr. Jones significantly more time to settle into what this film was, what its visual style would be, and what its characters, their relationships, and their dynamics could and should look like. Though, speaking of those characters and their dynamics, that probably was one of this film's biggest shortcomings, especially when it came to the human characters. Though, quite ironically, on the flip side of that, there were these close-ups of these orcs that were so still and subtle and yet still alive. Shots that were certainly comparable to the best of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes or Avatar. And to put that level of nuance and truth into something that is, for all intents and purposes, completely fake is no small feat and still does impress me, which, again, is just rather ironic because when the film does cut to a real set with flesh and blood performers on it, there was practically no nuance or life to be seen. We were just never given a chance to really understand or care for those characters or how they related to one another. So when those big plot-altering moments did occur, all I could really find myself thinking was, well, that was decently well acted, and there was some nice shots in there, and there was some nice music moving my emotions in a certain direction, but still only a shadow of what it could have been because I wasn't given the time to really care. And I think it really does come down to that, just a lack of time, because though at one point it may well have been good-intentioned, there was just this merciless leanness to this film's edit, which, in a climate of nearly every blockbuster feeling like it needs to be 2.5 hours, could be a refreshing change. But here, with a number of characters, locations, races, and magical powers, we really could have used that extra time. But as it was one step beyond just being a tight edit. It was as if large, very important chunks of story were just left on the editing room floor. And another one of the casualties of this edit was just a severe lack of understood geography. Not knowing where things were in relation to one another or how long it would take to travel from point A to point B was distractingly unclear and meant instead of engaging with the characters and what they were doing when they got somewhere, I was spending the first few moments of nearly every scene just trying to figure out where there was. And along with that, though I did very much enjoy the heightened, very fanciful version of magic that was on display and so unashamedly a part of this film, the filmmaker who has magic like that in his film then needs to be very careful in how he utilizes and develops it, lest it begin to feel like a cheap way to escape a situation, like, oh, they can do that now, and oh, they can do that as well? And another one of the big issues I had with this film were just the actors. Like the film version of John Carter, as much as I enjoyed that film and do still find it highly underrated, it was also just so miscast. Nearly every player, the ones with their faces showing anyways, feeling so out of place in these worlds. From the heroes, played by Travis Fimmel and Taylor Kitsch, to their leading ladies, played by Paula Patton and Lynn Collins. And on Warcraft, Ben Schnetzer in particular, who played kind of this young mage on the film, really felt like he belonged in one of my high school fantasy films. In a way, kind of reminding me of the Rupert Evans character from Hellboy, and not in a good way. Both actors going for this youthful, innocent curiosity, but both just falling so flat. Another element that kind of took about half of the film for me to just accept, much less appreciate, was the production design. At the same time, though for that first half its polish and vibrancy often made this world feel fake, like I was inside the pixelated reality of a video game, and again, not in a good way, about halfway through the film, because that style was so pervasive and unified, I did start to accept it as at least an interesting choice, one which certainly allowed the visuals not to be just yet another Lord of the Rings ripoff. But like Lord of the Rings, as this film was wrapping up, it became readily apparent that both the filmmakers and the studio were very intent on this being the first of many chapters, which was made all the more apparent with their rather sad attempt to add the subtitle, The Beginning, to this film a couple months before its release. But honestly, in the end, all this actually bums me out more than anything, because I didn't hate this film when Duncan Jones was on. He was on. I remember distinctly thinking during the opening scene of this film, wow, this is actually kind of cool. And even as the film continued, there were a number of moments where I caught myself really investing in the orc characters, appreciating how the writers were handling them as a people, even going so far as to draw some subtle comparisons to Native Americans and their relationship with Europeans. And though the foreign box office may be this film's saving grace, it already having made more in China than The Force Awakens did its entire run, I still have serious doubts that we'll ever see a Warcraft sequel. And again, for me, that is just a shame, because was this film great? No, but did it, like Ang Lee's The Hulk or Andrew Stanton's John Carter, possess elements that, were they given the chance to breathe or expand just a little bit more on a sequel, potentially produce something more holistically great? I think so, and it's for all these reasons I will still give Warcraft a 3 out of 5. I'd love to know what you guys thought of the film, especially you who play the video game. Knowing this world, do you feel like you appreciated this film just a little bit more than the average viewer? Definitely comment below and let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.